This isn't a very interesting story to some, but I felt like I still had to share it. It's been bothering me for some time now. First, a little background. I go into work right around 2 p.m. and I get out at around 8:30 p.m. I always take the same routes to go to and from work. Also, I've been working at this particular store for about 6 months. Well, one day, about a month and a half ago, I started feeling really weird while I was at work. Almost like I was there, my body was there, but my mind was somewhere else. It started about 2 hours before my shift ended. I thought, okay, kind of weird, but I was taking cold medicine at the time and figured that it was just messing with my head. That was until my drive home. On this particular night, I got out of work a little late. My DM came in because we had to unplug and shut down everything in the store so the city could do some kind of energy work or whatnot. I don't remember the details. I just know that if we didn't unplug everything, that it would get fried. So I'm driving home about 20 minutes later than usual, and my anxiety starts building to a point where I feel like I'm going to have a panic attack, and the feeling of being there but not there starts to get much worse. That's when I see it. As I said before, I take the same routes every day to and from work, but as I went down the road, I looked to my left and saw this big semiconductor plant all lit up that had never frickin' been there before. I pulled over on the side of the road, freaking out, not knowing what to think or do. I know for a fact that it had never been there before, and it's really hard to miss when you're driving. Driving home in complete darkness with a huge lit up power plant. You didn't even have to look for it. Couldn't have missed it. That's how big it was, and all of a sudden it's just there. I sat there for a minute until I calmed down a bit, trying to reassure myself that it had always been there. I just wasn't paying any attention to it, and that I'm not going crazy. I probably just hadn't seen it before, right? A few minutes later, my boyfriend called me and asked if I could pick up some McDonald's for him. Sure, no problem. I passed by one on my drive home. The feeling of anxiety and not being there started to fade until I pulled into the drive-thru, ordered my food, and then a worker I had never seen before was sitting at the front window. I asked him how long he'd been working there, and he said about 2 months now. It was at that point that I really began freaking out. I came to this place nearly every day for months at varying times throughout the day when I would arrive there. Even weirder yet, he was the only worker there that night. I'm sure there's an explanation for that part, but it sure didn't help me feel any better after discovering a new power plant just popped up out of nowhere about 20 minutes earlier. I proceeded to go home and have a full-blown panic attack, curled in a ball, shaking, crying, hyperventilating, the whole deal. I told my boyfriend about the power plant I'd seen, and he said, "Oh yeah, that's always been there. Have you not seen it before?" And now every day I look at that place and freak out a little bit every time that I pass by, because I know that it was never there before. Since then, I've noticed tiny little details about my life that are just slightly different, like my dog not knowing tricks that she used to know since she was a pup, or my boyfriend pronouncing a few words differently than he did before. The only explanation that I can come up with is that I accidentally slipped into an alternate reality while on my drive home from work. Here is more details for clarity. I ended up calling the power plant in the city out of ignorance of what it was and got myself into some trouble for that one. Also, I didn't clarify the city name where I live and work for privacy reasons. Here's some more pictures that I took of that power plant when I drive by at night. You really can't see it that well, but believe me, in person, it's much more massive than this. So my fiance and I were doing some house cleaning today. My fiance goes to open the front door to toss a small dirty rug outside. I was watching him do this. When he opened the front door, it was completely black outside, even though it was 2 p.m., and our whole entrance area and living room is brightly lit because of the sunlight coming from the outside. Then the outside of the front door lit up instantly, and then it went dark again, and then finally the light once again came back on, as you would say, and it stayed like that. It reminded me of when a light bulb flickers just before it's about to burn out. You know how they look. I said to him, "Did you see that?" And he goes, "Yes, just what happened here." There weren't any clouds outside either, so we can't really blame it on large cloud cover in the area. I felt like I was in a video game that needed to load the environment, and the frames froze for a second while it was trying to load up. I've read stories like this before on Reddit and on other websites, and for me to experience this firsthand really tells me that this isn't mass hysteria or something that people are hallucinating about. This is real, and the chances that we are all living in some kind of a simulation or some kind of a computer program, albeit a very high-tech and elaborate one, shows that reality as we know it is far more different than we have originally been taught by the educational system and society. So this actually happened last week. It just took me some time to come to terms with it. I got a phone call from my next door neighbor later in the evening asking if I could help him move a mattress into his upstairs area. His mom is ill and has a big, heavy, deep sleep number bed. I, of course, ran over to help because they're great neighbors and I want to be a nice person. I get over there and his friend, who was also a priest, was there to help. I helped them figure out how to separate the mattress from the bed so we could lift it upstairs. We get it all moved up and back in place when my neighbor asks if I can help him move an armoire upstairs as well. I think nothing of it, and we pull it out of his travel trailer and start bringing it up the front stairs of the house. This is where I think I slipped or passed to the other side, or died, if you will. The front stairs are 11 steps. I was on the lower end of the armoire, about 6 steps up, when my neighbor and his friend lose a handle on the armoire, and it comes crashing down on me, and I fall backwards towards the pavement. I then wake up in my dining room to my phone ringing, and my wife asking me if I'm going to answer the phone. It's my neighbor asking me if I can come over to help him move the bed upstairs for his mom. I go over there and meet his priest friend again, as this has been the first time I met him, apparently. And I say that I can help out with the bed, but I cannot help with the armoire. My neighbor was like, "How'd you know about the armoire?" I then proceed to tell him that I'm pretty sure that I just died a few minutes ago at his house, moving that stupid thing up the stairs. I spent the next hour talking with the priest. He had so many questions about what I had just said. My neighbor didn't believe it until I described the upstairs bedroom in perfect details, down to the metal mattress frame on the floor and the intricate headboard leaning against the wall, and I was at no point, even though I had a good relationship with my neighbor, ever up in the upstairs portion of the house, and I was never anywhere inside the house. That was my first time ever going into the house. And how would I know what it looked like inside unless I had been there before and had this kind of an experience? The priest asked me what I saw after I died, and I told him that I never actually died before it happened, and that the only thing that I remember is that I woke up at my dining room table to the phone ringing, and that's how I came over. I experienced my death but woke up alive about 20 minutes earlier in my same life. Strange, but true. This one happened around last year, but it still puzzles me. So during my lunch break, I like to have lunch and then coffee in this restaurant that is 3 blocks away from my office. I had just left my office, so I thought, phew, I have 1 hour ahead to have lunch in peace. I don't like to eat in a hurry, so I was glad that I could have lunch quietly and then read my book while I had coffee afterwards. It was 12:05 p.m. I usually take 10 minutes walking to get to the restaurant, so it was enough time for me to eat, read, and go back to my office. As I walked, I realized my shoelaces were untied, so I stopped to tie my shoes. I sighed and looked at my clock, and it was 12:10 p.m. I remember looking at my clock because I always look at my clock when I have to stop to do anything when I'm walking on the street. It's just a habit that I have. It was a very hot summer day, and I don't know if that was because of the heat, but I felt a little bit dizzy and lightheaded. But it was nothing serious, and I didn't have to stop and take a breath or anything like that. I tied my shoes and checked the time again, and I couldn't believe it. It was 12:40 p.m. I remember saying out loud, "There's no effing way," and I said that out loud in the middle of the sidewalk with other people around me. I got really mad because now I wouldn't have as much time to eat or anything like that, and I was confused, and I didn't know what to think at that time. How do I go from looking at my clock at 12:10 p.m. to only having a few moments pass by to tie my shoe, looking back at my clock, and noticing that it's 12:40 p.m. There's no way that I would take 30 minutes to tie my shoes, not even if I went really, really slowly. I usually do things at a very, very fast pace, but I'm not sure if what I was feeling earlier, the dizziness, had anything at all to do with this. Perhaps it did, but I still think it's pretty weird for me to experience this, and it puzzles me to this day. For starters, this is my first post here, and I normally wouldn't post unless I thought this was something really, really strange, which it is. This is what happened the last night that I still can't explain. I was learning how to skateboard with two friends. My friend and I were about to skate down the street on our boards, which is slightly downhill, when a homeless man walked up to us. We chatted briefly, and the homeless man asked me if I had any money. I said that I didn't have any cash, but that my roommate made a bunch of homeless bags, and that I could run to my house and grab one really quickly. At this point, I had 1 foot on the board and 1 foot on the ground. There was a snowbank right next to me, so I would have to wedge the skateboard into the snowbank so it wouldn't have rolled down the hill. I was right next to it. It was the obvious choice. I was right across from my house, so I ran in and grabbed the bags, which were right next to the front door. This whole thing took about 20 seconds. I come out, give the homeless man my bags, and immediately look down, and I say to myself, "Where's my board?" My friends looked confused and said that they did not know, but they just saw me on it. The homeless man also said that he didn't see it. We thought maybe that the homeless guy took it, but it was a whole skateboard, and he would have had to have used both hands to open up the bags to look through them and hold it at the same time, which would have been impossible. Plus, he was standing right in front of my friends and I the whole time. And it was 1 a.m. and it was dead outside. The only other thing that happened was that a car passed while I was inside. So they thought maybe somebody grabbed it really quickly from the car and stole it. However, that would have been pretty hard to do, and I think it's highly unlikely that that happened. We looked for it for about 20 minutes. We looked down the street in case it rolled and nobody noticed. And we were stumped. I asked them a million times if they were messing with me, and they sincerely promised that they weren't. And we were all just confused at the time, not knowing where else to look. It was also my friend's board, which was really concerning because it was a very expensive board that he had. I told him that it was probably a glitch in the Matrix, and that I wouldn't be surprised if that board showed up today. Sure enough, my friend leaves this morning, calls me and says, "I've closed the loop in the Matrix. I was walking in my car this morning up the road, and the skateboard was right next to the dumpster. The dumpster was up the road, which was uphill, and we weren't anywhere near the uphill portion of our neighborhood during this conversation. I still have absolutely no idea how it got there, and how nobody noticed it move in the 20 seconds that I was gone.